Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest in our podcast like we usually do. This time, we have somebody who has great experience in holding office. She is an Alternative Party member who won office and has been in that position, and she's going to share some of her wisdom with us today. Her name is Kate, and she is with the Libertarian Party. So welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be here.
We're glad to have you. If we could get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Okay. My name is Kate O'Brien. I've been libertarian for well over half a century.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a very long time, since I was very young. I am a civil engineer, or as I like to say, civil most of the time engineer. Semi-retired. I'm just taking on very small projects right now. I got elected to the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District Board of Directors in November of 2000. I won my seat by 3 votes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And I've been reelected ever since. I'm stepping down this year because I figured that 6 terms, 24 years was pretty much long enough, and somebody else should take a turn.
Sure.
Yeah. I live in Simi Valley. What else is interesting about me? Not much. So,
oh, no. You're being hard on yourself.
No, right. I just being facetious here. I've been living in Simi. I moved to Simi Valley in 1997, and 3 years later got elected to the board of directors. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, I know.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. So, there we are.
Great. A lot of stuff that we can talk about with the introduction plus everything else. So that sounds good. Now, you said civil engineer?
Civil, yeah. Civil engineers, it's a broad category. I do, civil engineers do traffic, highways, infrastructure, water, sewage, pipelines, structural work. My concentration is structural, which means I work with architects and contractors to build stuff. We like to say that mechanical engineers build weapons and civil engineers build targets. So, yeah.
Good. So you're in the good field then, the good stuff field of engineering.
Oh yeah. It's been a very rewarding career. It really has.
Great.
Yeah.
So how has the career informed your libertarian views?
Well, it's two separate things. It's when I was growing up, I think I was always a libertarian because I always thought people should just be left alone if they're not hurting anybody. And I remember when I was very young, my dad and I used to have long conversations, and I remember him telling me once that you can always tell if a law is a bad law. If it's a bad law, if it turns people into criminals if they're not hurting anyone.
Wow.
Someone who's minding their own business and not hurting one and they're a criminal anyway because of what they're doing, that's a bad law. Oh, okay, that makes so I always thought that way. And then when I grew up, I went to college and discovered there was a whole world out there, which is everybody should go away to college. I mean, I think you get all of your education. You get like 10% of your education in the classroom and 90% of it out of the classroom. Well, that's what happened to me. But I discovered there was a movement named Libertarian, and they thought like me. I thought, oh my God! So, and it was not even at the time. It's not a recognized political party in California. It took several years, but. So anyway, I was like, oh, that's what I am. I'm not from Mars. That's what I am. Okay, cool. So I've been wondering. Yeah. So now the career thing, it kind of happened at the same time. It was concurrent. I had no clue what I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted to do something really interesting and fun and exciting. You know, I knew I wasn't cut out to be a parent, a mother, stay-at-home mom. I just knew that was a bad career path for me. So I had to do something else. So I went to the employment office, the student employment job center, whatever they called it, I forget. Took a bunch of aptitude tests, came out real high on science and math, which I had studiously avoided all through high school because I didn't want to work hard in high school. I just wanted to hang out with my friends and party, which is I'm still that way, by the way. So that okay, well, that's interesting. And then I was going to school part time, and nothing was really interesting to me. And I thought, well, maybe I should make some money while I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. So I looked on the job board, and one of the job offerings was a part-time, flexible hours, part-time administrative help in an engineering office. And I thought, well, I could do that. So I went over down there, interviewed, got hired, started working, and I found what they did really interesting because they would create these drawings of things that was built, and it fascinated me. And they taught me drafting just because they needed extra drafting help, and so they taught me drafting. And then, given that I had these high scores on math and science, after having studiously avoided math and science, and it wasn't that I got answers correct, is that my mind works like a scientist or a mathematician. So okay, well, let's go for the civil engineering degree. So I did. And I changed jobs after a few years and working for a company that had a tuition reimbursement program. So I was able to complete my bachelor's degree while working for this company. So that was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that time when you go away to college and when you're young and like in your late teens, early 20s, I think that's the time when you're trying to figure out who you are. And in my experience, I was doing that. So that's how it was. Yeah.
All right.
So
that's good. So for engineering, a lot of people, when they talk about their career path and the intersection between that and their politics, they would say that government regulation in their field was what reinforced their libertarian views. Would you say that's the
definitely. Yes, absolutely. It definitely does. And now I've been self-employed for 30 years, so I've had to deal with building departments. And yes, it's for one thing. I mean, there's a few things. When you're self-employed, you do get eaten alive by taxes, and it's outrageous because you pay both parts of the Social Security tax, and you pay.
Yes.
It's amazing. I mean, it eats you alive. Second thing is a building department. One thing is we all know the government's too big. There's too many laws, and you go to the building department, and some of their regulations are idiotic, but some of them do make sense. Like 5-foot setback from the property line. That sounds kind of arbitrary, but it's not. If your house catches on fire, you want to minimize the chances of it spreading to the neighbor's house. That's what the whole point of setbacks. So that kind of thing. And there's like code requirements about where stuff should be, and some of it is outrageous and idiotic, and some of it is not. I've had a couple of projects also where they gave us all kinds of plan check comments. What you do is you submit your project to the planning department or building and safety, and they review it, send back a lot of things they want to see. Usually it's just notes or things, but every once in a while you get this horrendous nightmare of comments for things you have to change, and that's not too often, fortunately. I've had things like this happen where we got through all the comments and got all done, and then the plan checker looked at it again and changed their mind. They said, you know what, we're not going to give you the permit. Here's why. I've had that happen a couple of times, and that's an example of government run amok. We had years ago, I had one project I worked on where we went over the guy's head because he was obviously on a power trip. It was very clear. I and the architect went in a few times. And so we finally went over his head and talked to his boss, and he got real cooperative all of a sudden. So yeah, it's that can happen. That government run amok can happen. It also gives you an appreciation for the code requirements that are necessary for safety, for public safety, and
sure.
So and it works both ways. So there you go.
So yeah, that's a good balance to strike between what's necessary and what's not.
True.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for us lay people who aren't in engineering, and you mentioned an architect, and you work with architects, how would you say that architects differ from civil engineers?
Well, an architect does all the stuff that architect makes the building look really pretty. And they're the ones that decide how it's going to look and how they want, like when you see things that are mid-century modern or I keep trying to, my brain is, I don't know. But the architect decides how it's going to look and where walls are going to go and how many windows. And they're also bound by a lot of code requirements. They have to have certain amount of energy conservation. You have to have, the right amount of insulation. You have to have a minimum number of windows, and you have to have various minimum floor heights, that kind of thing. So they do all that, and they're usually, the architect is usually the one that deals with the building department, and they do that, and they make sure that things like not only the structure but the electrical, mechanical, all fits within their architecture that they want it to look like, which sounds like a really hard job to me, to be honest. But
yeah,
and I just make stuff stand up. That's what I do. That's what I tell people. So
okay.
they say, okay, we have and it can be fun. Sometimes you can an architect with a real visionary. They can be really fun to work with. So that's good. It's you can, once you kind of get the basic principles of structural engineering down, you can fool around with stuff and make stuff really look interesting. And I've got one client who builds temporary structures, and for rich people, they have like 5-year-old birthday parties, and they bring in clowns and all these like things.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they go up, and then one of them, it was a birthday party or something, and they had a trapeze artist. They had a temporary structure with a trapeze artist on it, and they needed to get because it's temporary, you have to come up with like temporary thing, like sandbags to keep the thing in place, and when you have a person on it kind of raises the factor of safety and the importance of not, making sure it works right.
Yeah.
So that's very challenging. It's a lot of fun. So that kind of thing. I do a lot of those things now. So those are fun.
Okay. So pardon my ignorance if I missed it. Did you do residential or mostly commercial stuff?
Mostly residential.
Oh, okay.
I'm a one-person office, and I farm out drafting and things. I have some people I farm things out to, but I'm basically a one-person office. So I do ADUs, I do second-story additions, and small commercial projects.
Okay.
So that works well.
That's good that you mentioned that, because one thing I hear from Libertarian Party members and people of similar views is they believe that regulations lead to the shortage of affordable housing because you can't make cheap housing.
Yeah, that's true. They do. Regulations. I worked briefly for a developer years ago. The regulations, this is like 25 years ago, the regulations were so oppressive that we figured one house out of every 10 is like we threw in the bonfire because you had just meeting regulations. You had to, all kinds of things you have to do. It's not just, it's like where you put the houses, setbacks, some of those make sense, but not all of them. And you have to have an for every, like you have a big development, for every X amount you have to have parking, and you have to give money to local agencies, and you have to account for all. Yeah, it really does contribute to the shortage of housing. So
wow.
Yeah, it does. Every time they try to fix the housing shortage, they make it worse. They do things like, okay, rent control. Well, no, rent control is not a way to create more housing. It limits it. It's like minimum wage. It sounds good, but really it makes no economic sense. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Because if there was no rent control, then people could have cheaper houses, right?
Well, it's a supply and demand thing. If you're a landlord and you can't charge more than X amount of dollars for a unit per unit, and you can't, and if you want to evict people, you have to pay them humongous amounts of money. It's not worthwhile. You don't make any money do it. You end up losing money. So, you can't afford to make repairs or upkeep the property. So the quality of the housing goes down, and you're not likely to build anything new because there's so many building regulations and so many landlord-tenant regulations that it's not economically feasible to build more housing. So housing is very, very, very tight.
Okay.
And also when somebody does finally move out of a rent-controlled apartment, the rent will double or triple because they've been all the rent raising you couldn't do while the person was there, you catch up on.
Oh
So
my.
so that's the problem. I mean, it's the supply and demand. If you make it hard to create more housing, if you make it hard to supply something people want, they won't supply it. It won't be worth the effort, especially if you can't make any money doing it. So why would you? Why would you want? Yeah. Why would you build something? Why would you buy a building and rent it out? So all those, and they try to fix it by imposing rent control, which makes it worse, or imposing regulations, and just whatever they do seems to make it worse. So if you step back and just let people figure it out themselves, that often works a lot better.
So do you think the solution that many people have to housing is tiny homes? Do you think those are structurally sound?
I'm sorry, say again?
One solution people often present for housing, especially in the bigger cities when there's a lot of homeless population and people who have trouble with rent, is tiny homes. So do you think those are structurally sound?
Yeah, they are. I think, you can make a tiny home structurally sound. It's very, making a home structurally sound is not that hard, especially a small house. It's just basic. Make sure you have shear walls, make sure you have a foundation and a roof, and you're good. And they have on some places, some cities, I think Salt Lake City a few years ago or a decade or so ago, started providing little tiny houses to their homeless population, and they found that was cheaper. It was less of a burden on the system to give everybody a tiny house. Rather, because if they're in the street, then you have to move them, and they go to parks, then you have to move them again, and they need free medical care, and they need food, and they need services, and if they have a home where they can actually live, and they have a roof over their head and a place to cook meals, they're actually less of a burden on the system. So not only is it you make tiny homes structurally sound very easily, it seems like an economically feasible solution to at least partial solution to the homeless crisis.
Great.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you ran for county the board in your area in 2000.
Yeah.
So did somebody encourage you to run, or is that a decision you made on your own?
Somebody encouraged me to. It's my former partner is as far as I know, still a very active libertarian, and he was encouraging. He had a project going, encouraging people to run for local offices, and so it's always been part of my nature to be part of. I mean, I'm a good person to approach about that because I tend to get involved in the community wherever I live. So it was like part of my nature to do this kind of thing anyway. So I mean, it wasn't like I was an introvert and changing everything about myself to run for office. It was something I probably would have done eventually anyway, even if he hadn't encouraged me. But he did encourage me, so I ran, and then I was running against three incumbents.
Oh wow!
And three incumbents, three good incumbents, good people, and another challenger whose dad was a political consultant and was hoping to get his son started in politics, and this seemed like a good avenue. So I said, look at my competition. I may as well. I'm not even going to bother running a campaign because it's a waste of time. I'm running against three incumbents and a guy spending a humongous amount of money. So everything I know about politics tells me don't even bother running a campaign. You're not going to win. So I didn't. So anyway, election night comes along, and we're he and I, my former partner and I, are both in another town helping, getting out the vote for another libertarian, and we get a phone call from our friends back here in Simi saying, well, Kate's hanging in there in third place for 3 seats.
Wow.
And it was like, what? Wait a minute, what the hell? So, and it was like that. It's like we'd already beaten one of the incumbents. Me and the other challenger, I and the other challenger, had already beaten one of the other incumbents. And we were like neck and neck for like 2 weeks, and then he started pulling ahead. And we thought, okay, well, it was fun while it lasted. And then they started counting the provisional ballots. Now, I don't know what other states are like, but in California, if you go to a polling place and you don't have, and you're not sure you're registered, but you're in the wrong polling place, they'll always let you vote. But they'll put it in like a pink envelope. And if it turns up you didn't vote anywhere else, then your vote counts. So there were like several thousand of those in Ventura County. So they started counting the provisional ballots, and I pulled ahead, and then I won by 3 votes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? At the time, it was the closest race in the history of Ventura County. I think someone broke that record a few years back, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
So that was
Wow.
kind of fun. That
So
was bizarre. It was one of them bizarre. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, 'cause we had a recount too. And a recount is, they count every single ballot by hand. I mean, usually they were using a machine. They're still using a machine. But they hire people to come in and count each ballot by hand, and the thing is, you let people from each campaign come and watch it, so you make sure that nothing gets missed.
Yeah.
So we were there. It was like a whole week, and it was they were like 80% through the ballots, and I started pulling ahead. So the other side just called it off, said, "Yeah, we concede, you won." So.
Oh, that's good. That's nice of them.
That was nice. Will do that. Yeah. The fellow that I ran against, that guy, it was a real nice fellow. It was a splendid example of grace under pressure, I thought, too.
Wow.
So, very nice
that's
guy.
rare.
Yeah.
That's rare to hear about a campaign like that where you respect your opponent and everything was civil.
Yeah, I was very civil, and he was a really nice fellow. And I always
wow.
thought, when I guess that splendid example of grace under pressure. So
there you go.
The thing to emulate. So.
Well, that's an unusual way to win the office too. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what did you learn when you were in the position for those times? What did you learn about politics, about your office, and also about further campaigns?
Well, it's a local on the local level. It's not like the Harris Trump debacle. It's on the local level. It's more about making sure the grass is mowed in the parks and the streets are paved and the trash is picked up. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity for libertarian bully pulpit stuff, but I do have a bias, and it tends in the direction of lower taxes and less regulation. So I will vote that way when I'm voting. We have an assessment that was put in place the year before I got on the board, and what it is, it's as a result of Prop 218 and Prop 13, where a long time ago, California put all these restrictions. It was the Jarvis-Gann people who had put the proposition on the ballot, Prop 13, which limits the amount of the raising of taxes. It's like, local agencies were raising taxes at the time. They were raising taxes outrageously, and people were being taxed out of their homes. That's wrong. That is totally wrong. You don't have to be a libertarian to figure that out,
Oh, sure.
So we have Prop 13 and we have Prop 218, which also just further clarifies Prop 213. So what we did is what the Park District did, and I was not on the board at this time, but the Park District started an assessment, and what happened is only property owners got to vote on it initially. And it's like $25-30 a year. And now I think it's up to $40. It's a very minor amount of money. But it's still a tax, and you still vote to raise it, and I still want to think about it. So generally speaking, I vote no on that. But if we do something like if I work with the management and the other board members to just hold it, don't increase it this year, keep it the same, then I'll vote yes on it. If they'll work with me, I'll vote yes on it, because it's, like I said, pretty minor, and it's one of the most fair taxes I've ever come across.
Wow.
But another thing that worries me about doing that locally is especially in the early days when I was on the board, Sacramento, California, state of California is bankrupt on a regular basis. They run out of money, and they would come knocking at our door and saying, "Okay, special agencies, you've got some money here. We'll take that. Thank you."
Wow.
So I don't. I always feel like if we keep raising taxes, it feels like it's a pipeline to Sacramento. So that's something to think about too. So that's the thing I think about. I feel like they're getting the wrong message. So anyway.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
And they've diverted money they've been diverting money from us for decades anyway. So it's they divert money from special agencies for education, and education hasn't gotten better; it's gotten worse. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You know what I mean? So it's like every time they try to fix it, they seem to make it worse. So anyway.
So when you ran again the other times, did you not campaign like the first time, or did you campaign like the first time?
No, I did. I ran campaigns in subsequent re-elections. Like in 2000 was the one where I won by 3. But 2004, I had no idea what to expect because I kind of won on a fluke. So I had no idea, if it was an accident, was I going to hold on to my seat? And I had several people gunning for my seat. One of whom was recruited by one of my fellow board members to run against me. So I ran a campaign and I raised money and put a campaign statement in the voter pamphlet. And election night came and I won. Not only did I win, I came in first. And not only did I come in first, it was the highest vote total in the history of the Park District.
Wow.
So I broke another record. So that was good. Now there's been two cycles where nobody ran against any of us, so we got a free ride. And that was nice. That happens. It's happened a couple of times. But usually running a campaign means putting the statement in the voter pamphlet, filing paperwork, putting the campaign statement in the voter pamphlet, putting up signs, attending candidate forums. So it's a little nerve-wracking, but it's a thing. So
you did that in the elections that you were unopposed as well? You still went to the campaign forums?
No, I don't usually. If the filing period closes and nobody's run against any of the incumbents, we don't need to run a campaign, so we don't usually.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you take part, if the Park District takes part in the election, we have to cough up some money to cover the costs. So if nobody's running against you, there's no reason to do that. And then part of my job is to be an astute guardian of the taxpayers' money. I don't want to spend $70,000 of the taxpayers' money if I don't have to.
Sure.
So if nobody's running against any of us, then we shouldn't spend that money. So
there you go. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So you said at the top of the show that you thought you were in there long enough with the term. So was that the big factor that made you decide to not want to run for re-election?
Yeah, it was that, and I was starting to feel kind of done, like it was time to it just felt like it was time to step down.
Okay.
Energy-wise, I just didn't feel like I had another 4 years in me, and if I couldn't be at the top of my game, I didn't, the taxpayers and the citizens of our county deserve someone who's enthusiastic and energetic and willing to put the time in. And I was for many years, for quite a long time. I was.
Oh, sure.
And I still am, as long as I have another 6 weeks or so. So I still am for another 6 weeks. I want to be.
Oh, okay. Until this election.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what are you planning? Are you expecting to feel a big void when you step down? Are you planning to do something as an alternative, or are you going to leave that extra space in your life?
Well, it's going to be partly extra space in my life, but I'm already filling it up. So, I'm taking classes at the senior center, which are really fun. I take ceramics, and I look like I'm going to get on. I'm probably going to end up on a couple of local boards that are not special agents, not publicly elected. They're just local nonprofits. And I've had several friends come up to me and say, if you get bored, we have things you can do. So I have a hunch I'm going to be busy. It's just going to be a little different.
Okay.
Meetings is long, But yeah, I am already filling up my time. So
great.
I don't think I'm going to be sitting home lonely and bored at all. So
good. We don't want you to do that. So that's ideal.
Yes.
So what advice would you give to people who are newer to running elections? Maybe some people who have ran an election or two before, or perhaps people who are running their first election. What advice would you give to them?
Oh man, since my first election was so strange, what I would suggest people do before they even think about running for office, just show up. 80% of life is showing up. Start going to chamber meetings. Go. I mean, if there's a race you want to go, if there's a seat you want, start going to their meetings. Go volunteer for stuff like go to your local Samaritan Center or your local free clinic or whatever you've got in your community. And there's a cliche. It says people don't care what you know until they know you care, and it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. People want to know that you really care about them. They want to know that you care about the community, and if so start showing up. Find something that looks interesting and show up. And I was going to say, find something that you're passionate about, but sometimes you don't know until you start that you're passionate about something. In fact, I don't think people find their passion. I think people show up and then their passion finds them is what I think happens. That's happened to me anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You say, hello, I'm your new passion. Oh, well, nice to meet you. That kind of thing. So that's what I just show up at everything you can think of and do stuff that interests you and makes you excited. Because that's what the world needs. We need people who are excited about doing stuff.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And we don't need more apathy, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's what I would suggest people do to start. And then at some point you'll find some local elected office or local elected agency where you think you can make a contribution, and that's the one you should start going to their meetings and finding out what's going on. And then when it comes time. I would also suggest wait until there's an open seat if you can. It's a lot easier to win an open seat election than an incumbent. Now, I did everything, none of that worked for me the first time because it was so weird. But that was weird. That's like a lottery winner advising people on how to get rich. It's like, that was weird. That was a weird fluke. That doesn't normally happen. So
sure.
So there it is.
So Kate, we ask the people who we interview how we can help them. Usually they're in the middle of a campaign or they're actively involved in a political party. So they'll say things like, you can donate to my campaign. So we want to ask you the same thing and kind of let us know how we can help you. So how can we help you?
You can help me by donating, finding a libertarian campaign that you can donate to and either donate time or money. Because every one of us that gets elected to public office makes the rest of us less wacko to the general public. You know what I mean? It's like if we have enough libertarians in office, people start taking us seriously as a party. And that'll help all of us. Since I'm stepping down, there's not anything you can really, much you can do for me right now. But that would, if you donate to your local libertarian candidate, is what I would say.
Perfect.
Okay.
Kate, thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you. That was fun.
Wonderful. We wish you all the best in your new endeavors and your post-office life.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, take care and all the best.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, bye.